The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. I was recently checking out an old clip from the show about cantaloupe killing more people in the U.S. than Islamic terrorists in a particular year. I don't know if it was a story we did in 2016 about 2015, or we did it in 2015 about 2014. Anyway, I was looking at that story on YouTube, and I came across an article about the 13 most dangerous things in your home, like the things in your home that are responsible for the most deaths on a year-to-year basis. And I thought we'd review some of them. Some of them are obvious, some of them less so. Stairs is at the top of the list, okay? That one of the most common home dangers is stairs. And that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you see this emergence of those stair lift things where you can just sit down and ride up your staircase.
Indeed.
Very important. Or you should just live on one floor if you're getting older or can't move in the same way that you used to.
Electrical wires and sockets. That makes sense to me. And I don't know that I've ever told the story, but I sort of electrocuted myself when I was a kid. I was still living in Argentina at the time. And I remember I was making a paper boat in my parents' bedroom, and I wanted to turn on a light. It was when there was like a little party going on, so there were a bunch of people there. And I went to plug in the light, which was unplugged for some reason. And my finger was sort of between the prongs. And as soon as I plugged it in, my hand got very hot. I got shocked. And I remember, my parents came in and it was a whole thing. And still to this day, I remember that incident, and I'm very careful to keep my fingers on the outside of the plastic when I plug anything in.
Luckily, those sockets don't generally have enough electricity to the point where they'd kill you.
Right.
But, I mean, that's still kind of a big deal. You got to test your outlets whenever you change them.
Absolutely. Unsecured windows, that makes sense, particularly if you're not living on the first floor. You could have a kid particularly fall out of a window.
Like
that makes sense.
Eric Clapton's son.
Eric Clapton's son, indeed, yeah. Heating systems. Heating systems is not one that I thought of as much, but heating systems of different kinds can actually cause fires. So it's usually not the heating system itself that hurts someone, but it's a fire caused by the heating system. And that does make sense when you consider everything from radiators to gas furnaces, etc.
Especially because, maybe half the time you're home, you're sleeping. If you just break it down, if you're at work 8 hours a day, if you're at home 8 hours and sleeping 8 hours, half the time that these things could go wrong, you may not even be conscious enough to deal with it.
Yep, absolutely. Stoves make sense to me. You could leave grease fires are one thing in terms of cooking things on the stovetop, leaving the oven on, etc.
I've done stuff like that.
Oh, really?
I've left the burner on and then left and went about my day. That's pretty bad, isn't it?
That's not good.
That's not good, yeah.
I wonder now if newer stoves have auto shut-off systems of sorts.
Luckily it wasn't gas, it was electric. It's not like things can't go wrong in that instance, but as long as nothing's on the surface, I didn't think it would cause that big of a problem, but I definitely got away with one there.
Kids' toys on the list, and that does make sense. You would think mostly kids are playing with their toys at home, and it makes sense that things happen with toys, it's going to happen at home. Carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is one that makes sense. Unsecured furniture. I have bought and put together a lot of IKEA furniture in my days, and some of those pieces say, for safety, some of them say if there's kids around, some of them just say in general, you should secure this to the wall so it doesn't fall off. I basically never do it because there aren't kids around, and I'm not going to really be doing anything where an entire bookcase or bureau might fall over. But unsecured furniture is a top danger in homes and leads to injury. Yeah,
so that one, and I would say children's toys, is one that really just affects children for the most part. I guess it could be adults too, but definitely just children, I would say.
One that affects children and adults, firearms. I don't think I have to say too much about it. I think we're aware of that. Electronic devices also on the list, often related to things that go wrong during charging. Older devices that don't have auto shutoffs. When the charging is complete, things can get very, very hot, and you can have fires that start as a result of that. Over-the-counter medications, also one that's interesting, again, because people are mostly consuming these medications in the home to a great degree.
Well, I have a theory, too. I think suicides are probably factored in here as ways you could die in your home. And if you look at the list, carbon monoxide poisoning, over-the-counter medications, and firearms, Those are 3 methods someone could use to kill themselves, too.
Absolutely.
And that would get factored into the study.
One that surprised me, laundry pods. Laundry
Wow.
pods. And this is all related to kids and unsupervised kids putting them into their mouths, putting bad chemicals into their mouths. And then bathtubs and pools. Bathtubs and pools, a big source of injury and death at people's homes who have them. And that is pretty obvious to me.
Yeah, and that's why you're often required to put a little fence around your pool. But I guess that's more for intruders or people that are just stumbling across your backyard and they fall into the pool.
It's not really going to keep
the homeowners.
people in the home safe. Yeah, very good point. So, okay, interesting list. Some surprising, some pretty obvious. Malaysians have been banned from leaving North Korea, which is a sort of odd story because, as far as we know, there are no Malaysians in North Korea. And people are trying to figure out what this latest decree from the Kim Jong-un regime is all about. And it's basically, it's a tit-for-tat ban, a reciprocity. North Korea and Malaysia have banned each other's citizens from leaving their countries. And this is all related to the killing of the cousin of Kim Jong-un, or I'm sorry, half-brother of Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-nam, who was recently killed with a potent nerve agent. So then these tit-for-tat bans happened, but it turns out that there are no Malaysians in North Korea to ban. So
right. They got angry and wanted to retaliate and do the exact same thing that Malaysia did to them. But the problem is they didn't have the people.
Yeah, you kind of need the people in order to make it mean anything. And we report when the Kim Jong-un regime does crazy stuff. But I'm not a North Korea alarmist, but I'm not just laugh off everything North Korea does guy either. I think that there actually are legitimate threats from North Korea. I think it is a dangerous regime. They do have nuclear weapons. And I know that the hope is that they wouldn't really be stupid enough to do something that crazy. But I'm not in the field of just laugh at everything they do and don't worry about them. It's dangerous.
Right, because, I mean, at the end of the day, nuclear weapons are nuclear weapons. I mean, even if we don't take them seriously now, that could all change very quick.
Yeah.
I think it goes to this idea when we were debating the war in Iraq. I think North Korea had nuclear weapons back then. We were thinking, why don't we go into that country? Because they seem to pose a greater danger than Iraq does.
Well, they don't have oil.
They don't have oil, exactly, yeah.
Are you interested in the entire oil narrative around the Russia-Trump stuff? I find it pretty interesting.
Yeah, you may want to explain that for the audience, for some people.
Earlier in the week, I mentioned that many in our audience are suggesting that to really understand the entire Trump-Russia situation, we should think about Russia and oil and ExxonMobil and companies like it, and that really that is, according to more and more people in our audience, actually what is underpinning this desire for closeness, friendship with Russia, call it what you will. And when it's a circumstantial case to some degree, but it's pretty convincingly circumstantial, I guess I would say.
Yeah, because I think the reasons people point to now as to why Russia would want to have influence would be things like recognizing their annexation of Crimea, things like removing all the sanctions, and perhaps just having this attitude of, well, Russia does horrible things and we do horrible things and it's one and the same.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you often have to follow the money, especially when you're dealing with countries colluding on something big like this.
No doubt.
And when you're dealing with a $1 trillion+ dollar industry like oil, I mean, you got to follow the money in that instance too.
I'm going to keep a closer eye on the oil narrative when we're looking at what I'm guessing are going to be continuing revelations about the Trump administration and Russia. That's my guess. I want to just check in with our audience about the entire two-part interview thing. So one of the overwhelming bits of feedback from the survey that we did of our audience some weeks ago, at this point it's been probably close to a month since we did it, was longer interviews. And we found a way, some people don't like the interviews at all, okay? And that's fine, it's not for everybody. You can skip the interviews. Some people want the interviews to be longer. And a compromise that I found is that we can do longer interviews but split them into two parts so that each day you still have 3 out of the 4 show segments be us talking about stories, which is what some people want. But in total, you might have an interview over 2 or even 3 parts that will be a longer interview, which is what some other people want. And we've done a few of these interviews. We had the Marcelo Gleiser interview. We had the Kathy O'Neill interview. We had the Richard Stallman interview. What other two-parters?
Richard Spencer.
The Richard Spencer interview was a two-parter, that's right. And I think there was one other a week or two ago. Upcoming, we have an interview with Professor Matthew Liao, which is going to be a two-parter about the sort of neuroethics, the field of neuroethics, which I find very interesting.
Stefan Guyanet, I think, was the other one.
Stefan Guyanet.
Guyanet.
Like
DNA.
That was another two-parter. And in April, and this is super exciting, we're going to have Professor Cass Sunstein on the show, who has written some very interesting books, and he has a new book out called, actually I forget what it's called. It's like is it hashtag democracy? I don't remember now. It's hashtag something. Anyway, the interview's a few weeks away, so I haven't done all the research yet. So we're going to be doing a bunch more of these two-parters. I'm kind of liking it because we can actually get into more depth with the guest, but yet we are still covering 7 or 8 stories per show, which is what a lot of other people want. But I want to hear from the audience about whether they're liking it, and also interview suggestions now that we have this paradigm of being able to spend 25 or 30 minutes with a guest rather than 11 to 14. Who would you like to see us interview?
Yeah, I think it depends on a few things as to whether we should have these longer form interviews or the shorter ones. Part of it has to do with what the subject matter is. Does the audience want to hear about whatever the topic is? How well known is the guest? But it seems like we made the right decision as to which ones we should make half an hour long. And some will only be 10 minutes, but I don't think people ever complain about the length of the interviews themselves. If they do so, they want them to be longer.
Yeah,
but no one who likes the interviews ever complains that they're too long.
Yeah, either people skip the interview if they don't like the interviews or they don't like the subject or the guest. And in that case, the length doesn't matter. Or people say, it would have been better to have more time with this person. But we've not yet heard, which is shocking because we've heard basically everything from someone over the years. We've not heard the interviews should be shorter.
Right, because then you have to make this argument that they should be diluted in a certain way or cut down on some of the topics. And who wants to pick and choose what things should not be discussed about? You know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, so anyway, I'd like to hear from you or the members in the audience. What are you thinking about the two-parters? Are there guests you would like to see on the show? Let us know, and we will try to make it happen.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.